been very successful at that. As a matter of fact, I was told today that President Obama is now changing his tune and on the Keystone Pipeline. We are also working very closely with the federal government and with the other provinces, both BC and Saskatchewan, to work on the Gateway Pipeline. The Gateway is going to be a lot more complex. They're going through the public hearings right now, and Prime Minister Harper has stated that they will go through the due process. But I will tell you that as a province, it's very important for us to get the Gateway Pipeline through. I think it's actually more important than the Keystone. And the reason I say that is that I think that it's time that as a province that we no longer be beholden to just the United States of America. I think it's important that we open up the markets in Asia, which is China, India, and we go east and open up the markets in Europe. For example, shipping liquid gas to the East Coast and then shipping it through the St. Lawrence. The reason being is that the Europeans want our gas because they don't want to depend on the Russians for their supply. So I think there's some very good opportunities for us. I think it'll be great for the province. But I can tell you that our Premier and our government is working very diligently on getting these pipelines open so that we can continue to move product and provide a better livelihood and lifestyle for all Albertans.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Glenn?
You'll be a little bit surprised perhaps this evening that you'll find that the Alberta Party will actually find ways to agree with other speakers this evening, because we believe that good ideas can come from anywhere, and it shouldn't just be about the ideology of which party puts forward a position. If it's in the best interest of Albertans, we'll support it, and if it's not, we'll offer a stronger alternative for the consideration of government. That being said, when we released the Alberta Party's energy and environment policies, we released them on the same day in the same policy paper. Because in Alberta, energy and the environment are two sides of the same coin. We can't make decisions in one area, such as energy and the pipeline, without understanding and correcting the impact on the infrastructure and the impact on the environment. I had trouble spitting that out, didn't I? We can speed up the pipeline if we have a better reputation, for example, with our environmental responsibility, ensure that the good regulations are in place that will be respected by those whose land that we're crossing, whether it's into the United States or whether it's through First Nations land, which is starting to hold up the Northern Gateway Pipeline. I spent a year representing this region's interest on the Northern Gateway Pipeline panel of citizens, where we were looking at all the potential impacts on it. And the single biggest concern was the lack of consultation. That as the pipeline was coming into people's areas, we needed to have an understanding of the impact on their lands. We had to have an understanding of how we could mitigate that impact. Just 2 summers ago, I believe, we put a pipeline through Jasper National Park. We can do it across any place in this country and on this continent if we do it responsibly, with good consultation in the forefront, and understand that we're meeting the needs and the concerns of those people that feel negatively impacted by it. So the Alberta Party does support the infrastructure needed for the Northern Gateway Pipeline as well as the Keystone Pipeline, but we are ensuring that good regulation from an environmental perspective can be put in place, and that should help to expedite the development of these pipelines.
Thank you, Glenn. Stuart?
Question. It's interesting. Sorry, I had a cold that came just as the writ was dropped. It hasn't gone away, but thank you for your question. What's interesting as you asked that question is that as times change, when I was a young man, the issues of the day were deforestation and acid rain. Now the issues of the day that seem to be holding us back a little bit are the oil sands and issues related to that. So with respect to some of the things that we could be doing with pipelines and getting things going, I think the Wild Rose Party has proposed an aggressive communication strategy for Alberta's energy resources and for environmental stewardship, and the two of them go hand in hand. And doing both of those and taking that messaging out in Alberta and then throughout Canada and then throughout the United States and the rest of the world will help us get a smoother go into the future as we address the problems of today, which are those problems. And the Wild Rose Party first presented this all-encompassing communication strategy 2 years ago at the annual general meeting at Red Deer, where Daniel Smith came out and said that. And from that, we've gone to an energy strategy that'll help with this, to cooperation with industry to accelerate and reduce reclaiming selling ponds, make sure environmental considerations are properly mitigated, including large project approvals, diversify exports, particularly to Asia, promoting investment and trade opportunities. And we will work with the federal, using all those tools, we will work with the federal government in order to help build a gateway pipeline to open our access to foreign markets. But I think we need all those tools to help make things go smoothly into the future. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Stuart. Our third question tonight.
Good evening, I'm Jane Peters. I'm the town councillor here in Hinton. Gentlemen, I'd like to thank you very much for taking time this evening to be with us, to be here in Hinton. Empowered municipalities are key to Alberta's future. It is time for a new and an improved relationship between municipalities and the province, where municipalities have the resources to do the jobs. What will you do within the provincial government to ensure municipalities are a recognized order of government with defined obligations and authorities and the financial capacity to meet those obligations?
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Campbell, you have first mic.
Thanks for the question. I think that, first of all, I'll state that I think that our government and municipalities have a great working relationship. I think that at both the AUMA level and the AAMDC, which is the counties and districts, that we have a relationship where all of our counties, all of our municipalities feel quite comfortable coming in and talking to their MLAs and talking to the ministers. And I think that we put in the municipality. The Municipal Sustainability Initiative, I can put that out too, to help municipalities out, and I think that we continue to work with the municipalities, and I know that this fall we'll be opening up the Municipal Governments Act, which again will give us a chance for our minister and MLAs to sit down with the AUMA executive and the AMDC, and again talk to our local representatives of all our communities, which we have Epsom, Hinton, Grand Cache, Jasper, and Yellowhead County in this area, where we'll sit down and talk about the needs and whether or not the system we have in place is working and how we can improve it. But I look forward to that dialogue, and I look at our municipalities in this area, and I feel pretty good for the work that we've done working with the municipalities and the diversification that we've brought to the communities. And I feel pretty comfortable that as we continue to grow this riding, that our municipalities will be in a position to meet that growth with the help of the provincial government.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Glenn?
Thank you for the question, Councillor McCreadis. I guess this is one of those areas where we'll have to defer with the governing party at this point, because the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, whom I served with as a director for about 6 years, are the ones that have put forward this campaign about municipalities matter. They don't believe that they have a very strong working relationship with the provincial government, are quite concerned on behalf of all the municipalities in the province of Alberta about the instability of the funding relationship and the inability of us to have a clear understanding of who's responsibility for what resources, who's responsible for delivering what services, and where is the money going to come from. And so the Alberta Party is committed to building a new relationship with municipalities that is based on a relationship of recognizing them as a viable, representative order of government. The people that are elected at a local level to represent your interest also face election every 3 years. The Alberta Party believes that it should be every 4 years. And you have an opportunity to hold them accountable for their actions. As a matter of fact, the municipal government is a much more open government than any other level of government in Canada, because they're mandated by the Municipal Government Act that they have to make their deliberations and their voting in the public eye. And that's something that the provincial government can learn from. Again, that's one of the reasons that I'm involved with the Alberta Party, is building a provincial party that will represent the citizens in a much more open and transparent manner, not unlike what happens at a municipal level. And so we will begin by making sure that we've got long-term, reliable, sustainable funding in place so that municipalities can make long-term, reliable budgeting decisions and not be worried about this paternal relationship, about whenever the provincial government happens to have money, they can hand it down so that municipalities can make decisions in your interests. And we believe it begins with that new relationship that the Urban Municipalities Association and almost every municipal government in the province of Alberta is asking for. and it's time to take that step forward.
Thank you, Glenn. Stuart?
Thank you. I'd like to agree with the other Mr. Taylor. And I'd like to say that I have the newspaper article from the president of the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, and he describes what he thinks of how well the funding arrangement is going with the current government. And quote, we believe a change in the way we fund essential services is needed. The current municipal-provincial funding relationship doesn't give us access to a reliable source of money, etc. So to solve this problem, the Wild Rose government has released its commitment to municipalities. That's based on a few things that I've mentioned. Collapse the current patchwork of grant programs into a single provincial transfer called the Community Infrastructure Transfer. Send 10% of the provincial tax revenues and 10% budget surpluses directly to municipalities with no strings attached through this infrastructure transfer. Publicly disclose a provincial-wide priority list of provincial infrastructure projects and upgrades along with the criteria used to create it. Review the Municipal Government Act in order to better define the roles and responsibilities between municipalities and the province. And this would change and give the municipalities more secure funding, just like the president of the AUMA suggests right here. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Stuart, sorry. Even I'm getting confused. Mr. Mattson?
Okay, being the last on this subject, everything pretty much has been said from the various different party platforms. I'll bring it down to the local level. Hinton is in need of a new rec center. There seems to be a local demand for it from amongst the residents that I know of. And the first thing that I saw happen after that was somebody posted on Facebook suggesting that we should start lobbying our MLA now, even though he isn't our MLA now, and may not be in 3 weeks. And I think there needs to be, from my own personal perspective, I can go through again with the party policy, but you can read that online, that we need a system in place that recognizes it, the need, and addresses it by criteria, not on the basis of who you are and who you talk to and who you have connections to.
Thank you, Mr. Mattson. So we have a fourth question from the audience.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Brent Bish. I'm the president of the United Mine Workers. I have a question for the Wild Rose candidate, Mr. Stuart Taylor. It's actually a two-part question, but I'd also like to hear a comment from the other three candidates, if I may.
Okay, so let's give those two-part short, concise.
They will be. Mr. Taylor, your policy, the Wild Rose Party, is an advocate of the right-to-work legislation. I would like to know, first of all, what that means to Alberta and specifically to this riding, and also how you feel about it personally as a candidate of a predominantly Labour-friendly riding. Thank you.
Okay, so I do appreciate that you directed the question to the Wild Rose Party. However, the running order of tonight's session will make it so that Glenn will be the first to answer, please.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Bish. I was on record in 1997 when I first ran for public office in this constituency, and the reason I ran was actually because at that time the PC government was introducing right-to-work legislation. I stand opposed to right-to-work legislation. I believe that unions serve a purpose in our democracy and our working relationship, and I believe that that purpose is to ensure that we have good collective bargaining agreements. And I know that Mr. Campbell spent some time on the Labour Board, and he upheld that as well during his tenure on the Labour Board. An attack on workers' rights is an attack on democracy, in my personal opinion, and I believe that the introduction of workers' rights takes a large step backwards when it comes to the working relationship between the working men and women in this province and their employers. That's unequivocal, and that's my answer.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Stuart?
My answer is that I was unaware that we had a position on that legislation. I would have to check into that and get back to you.
Thank you. Mr. Mattson?
Okay, as a 25-year member of the CAP, I was active. I didn't fulfill any positions other than financial, but for the most part I was active working from the floor. I'm a little bit perplexed by Mr. Taylor's statement, being that there's a 15-year hole in his biography that doesn't mention he went straight from being 17 years old and working in a sawmill to a point later on in his life where now all of a sudden he's a small businessman and an adult educator. We worked together for 15 years at the mill. He was a union representative for me, and we had a lot of disagreements, but ultimately we're totally opposed to right-to-work legislation and would like to expand the opportunity for working people to access democratic access to the union of their choice.
Thank you, Mr. Madsen. Mr. Campbell.
Well, it's 30 years as president of the United Mine Workers. I don't think I have to answer that question. I spent my whole, most of my working life here in the coal industry, and quite proud of the work I've done in the coal industry, representing workers and representing the industry. So, you know, I would not be in favor of right-to-work legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. And now we have a fifth question from the audience.
Thank you very much, Ian Duncan, the Mayor of Hinton. The demand for post-secondary education in Hinton is growing. In my discussions with industry, some have stated that 66% of the skilled workforce will be retiring in the next 10 to 12 years. What is your opinion on Hinton getting a post-secondary facility, and what will be your commitment?
Thank you. Stuart, you have first answer.
I think that it's going to be very important as the MLA to work closely with the Community Sustainability Fund, the information that's in there, the mayor and whatnot, and get familiar with these issues. And there's some good opportunities in this town with respect to facilities and things that could be done regarding secondary education. And what I haven't heard is I haven't have some ideas of my own, but I think I haven't seen a needs assessment that lays out the needs. But there looks like there's some good opportunities with oil and gas, forestry, and the coal industries to do things. With respect to some of the wild rose things that we can do, and that was the 10 and 10 program that is strived for municipalities to give municipalities for some of the more smaller projects more control over the money, a longer term control that they would have to do some of those projects. The other thing we could do is work with the provincial government and for opportunities for provincial government land within the town or facilities that could dovetail into a project like that.
Thank you, Stuart. Mr. Madsen?
Yeah, I'm not aware of the specific details of the issue, but certainly if there was a need and the money was there, this is the first time in a long time that the NDP's been the fiscal caretakers as far as costing out everything and then providing the funding up front for it from revenue. The other parties have fallen down in that respect, but whatever facilities are built to meet the need, we're committed to keeping those services public as opposed to using the P3 concept, which is a public-private partnership. And the reason being is that as a friend who was involved in a partnership said that partnership and sinking ship are pretty much the same thing.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Your Worship, for the question. As you are aware, in 2008, I brought all of industry together to look at a cooperative training program for the area. Unfortunately, just as we were getting people together and getting the committee set up, the bottom fell out of the economy and industry drew back. From that point forward, you're also aware that Norquest College was given the stewardship of this area, and after some investigation, I wasn't happy with that, and worked to get Grand Prairie College to be the steward of our area now. And I've had numerous discussions with the president of Grand Prairie College and the board of directors. I've also was able to get one of our own on the board of directors to represent Hinton, which I think is very important. Also, we've had discussions with the town council and the Economic Development Authority, and I think that we've got a pretty good plan in place where I think it's come together this fall with a blueprint of what we want to see, and then we will we'll move forward with the other parts of the plan. And I forget what they are. I've got it written down, but I forget what the timelines that we had put in place. In the meantime, I've talked to both the Minister of SRD, which is Sustainable Resource and Development, which has the training center, and I've also talked to the Minister of Advanced Education about adding on to that facility. If you're not aware, they're going to spend some money and actually renovate the Hinton Training Center over the next 3 years. So I see some real possibilities there that we can work together with SRD and with Advanced Education and bring a satellite of Grand Prairie College to the area and provide the programs that we would see best fit the programs that are needed by industry and by small business in the area. Again, one of the challenges we face, though, and I don't want people to think that this is a done deal, though, is that we have colleges now across the province that have empty spaces.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Thank you very much. And Glenn?
Well, thank you very much for your question, Mayor Duncan. I'm going to answer your question by telling a story. Well, first off, Mr. Stuart Taylor, the town of Hinton has produced a needs assessment regarding the need for post-secondary education in this region, and it was endorsed by the Grand Alberta Economic Region and the representatives of other 4 municipalities in this constituency. We actually did this when the economy was in a downturn, as through part of my leadership in the town of Hinton when I was serving as your mayor. And we did a needs assessment to determine that what we were hearing from the citizens was actually correct, that there was a need in this community and in this region for a post-secondary facility, and a college ideally, one that could train nurses, could train tradespeople, could help people access school, if nothing else, get the first 2 years of education out of the way before the added expense of going on to university in the city. So myself and one of our fellow councillors traveled to Edmonton to meet with the Advanced Education Minister, at which point he shot us down. And the reason he shot us down is because we hadn't done our homework to get Mr. Campbell on side as the MLA. And we'd written a far-reaching statement that said, this is what we believe it should look like in 20 years. And the minister at that time, Minister Horner, said, that's not my vision of the future of post-secondary education in this region. You should have talked to your MLA first and got all this online. And that's the reality of what happened 5 years ago when myself and our councillor went to visit the Minister of Education, Advanced Education, and pitched the need for a post-secondary facility. Further to that, we advised Mr. Campbell and others that we did not want to partner with Northwest College because they're a city-centric and don't really understand the challenges you face delivering education at a post-secondary level here in rural Alberta. Guess who we got? Northwest College. We put forward a local man to be on the board when they were looking for board members. That was rejected. He's now been asked to serve on this new college. It was an incredibly painful experience because the government of the day would not listen to the citizens as represented by their local councils as we struggled, as you all know, to try and get post-secondary education here in this region. So an Alberta Party government has committed to ensuring that municipalities will be respected as they bring forward the issues of concern. You're welcome.
Thank you. Now we have a 6th question from the audience.
Eric Rosendahl, the president of the Labour Council. My question is to all the candidates. It's based on healthcare. One of the members of the crowd wanted me to ask about the issue with regards to all the health cuts that has occurred. It's created quite a problem for some of the seniors in trying to come up with the extra funding for some of these programs, i.e. chiropractor. So what we want to know is what you're going to do as an MLA to reinstate some of these cuts that were made. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So Mr. Mattson, you have first answer.
First of all, we're going to raise more revenue by increasing royalties to a more realistic level. We're also going to increase or produce a progressive tax for people making more than $200,000. That'll provide us with additional revenue. And the other commitment that we've made is, unlike some of the other parties, is that we're committed to keeping public health care public. We're unequivocal about that. And we're opposed to privatization, we're opposed to P3s. We're going to raise additional money, and we're going to pay for it that way.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell?
Well, I can tell you that chiropractic care for seniors is covered. So, and I don't know what other cuts that you'd be talking about healthcare. I mean, we're continuing to put more money into healthcare. We're expanding our doctors, number of seats available for both the U of A and the U of C. We've expanded the number of nurses. Through the Northern Alberta Development Council for Northern Alberta, we are providing the third and fourth year of schooling for doctors and nurses to practice in the North. So as far as the chiropractor, I can tell you that the seniors chiropractor is being paid, and I can tell you that we've made no cuts to healthcare as far as seniors. And so if somebody has a specific example and want to talk to me after the forum, I'd be quite happy to talk to them about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Glenn?
You know, it comes as no surprise to me that healthcare is the #1 issue on Albertans' minds. It's certainly been a concern ever since Mr. Klein started trying to bring in the third way of privatizing healthcare, and it's certainly being supported by the two lead contestants, shall we say, my colleagues in leadership, Ms. Smith on behalf of the Wild Rose and Ms. Redford on behalf of the PCs, where really they're both competing, it seems, which one is going to privatize it and which one is going to talk about it. But what I'd like to talk about in regards of cuts to healthcare is this, throughout this election, many of you, I'm sure, have noticed the fiscal promises that have been thrown around and seemingly at will every day. One of the other leaders is announcing $1 million here, $100 million there, $1 billion over there. The Alberta Party has stood alone without making fiscal commitments because we're not going to buy your vote. During the time in the legislature, they could have put the budget through. Within 12 hours of passing the budget, we were outside the budget when the Premier announced new pay for doctors. What the Alberta Party is committing to is common sense government based on a commitment to good governance. And you will see that our health system plan calls for an understanding that we have a responsibility to deliver on our personal health through good nutrition, through exercise, and teaching children to lead healthier lives. And then we have a responsibility to ensure that we reduce worksite accidents and trying to avoid chronic disease. And then when you need to access a healthcare to recover from an accident or recover from a sickness, that you'll be able to get into the healthcare system because we're not stacking seniors in beds because we're not funding proper senior care at the other end. The Alberta Party position on healthcare is that it's a continuum. It's not just about hospitals. We believe that there is enough money in the system if we can rebuild trust with the frontline deliveries of these services to help them understand how we can be more effective at delivering those services. So it begins with rebuilding trust in the health system so that we can find the efficiencies we need to find and not find increased taxation dollars to deliver on it.
Thank you, Glenn. Stuart?
Yes, we're paying an awful lot of money for our healthcare system, but we're not getting the results that we're paying for. We're paying more than the rest of the country for healthcare. The province of Quebec, for example, we're paying $1,000 per capita more than them. We're not getting better life expectancies. We're not getting reduced ER waiting times. So we need to do something to our healthcare system. We need to bring better management to it. And right at the start, I talked about the things that we would do with healthcare with respect to bring some more resources to healthcare, home care, 1,000 nurses, and a few other things. The two things that I didn't mention that are related to what you talked about are expand medical training for high-demand medical specialties. For example, doctors, we're not training enough doctors or other medical specialties. And then a student loan forgiveness program for medical specialties, particularly if they're going to come to urban areas to work. So those are some of the things we're going to do in addition to what I talked about before.
Okay, thank you, Stuart.
Hi, my name's Joan Janesco. I am a parent and I have advocated for children for the past 15 years. My question is we've talked about it, we've done it several times. I've been going around the circle to find answers and never get the right department. When do our children become children first and the department second? We go through the medical system, we go through the health system, we go through the social system, education, and each is treated separately rather than the whole child. It is very frustrating as a parent to watch these kids not get the services that they should be having and that they should be streamlined.
Okay, so
Thank you.
So your exact question would be,
when can we get our children thought of first? How can we make the government work together to see our children as first?
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Campbell?
Well, thanks for the question, and I've met with Joan, and I understand the situation that she's got. I'm not going to get into the details because it's personal. But I can say to you that we continue to work with our various stakeholders to work with our persons with developmental disabilities. These are the people that are on our PPE programs. I can tell you that we've increased the funding again this year by $59 million. A lot of that money coming to this area. Again, one of the challenges we face in rural Alberta, is that it's finding a provider that wants to come out to work here, and then finding them accommodation and working with them. I know that, for example, we're very lucky in Hinton that we have a home now for people. But I know that, whereas I know in Edson we actually have a carrier that does the work. That carrier doesn't want to come to Hinton. So, we're always looking to find people that want to come out in this area and provide the good work that has to be done. So I know what Joan's saying. I sympathize with her because I know it's very tough for a parent with a child with developmental disabilities that wants the best for their child. And we will continue to work with our partners. And like I say, in Hinton, we've got a place where people live now. We've got to find somebody that actually wants to come out and do the care for us, and that's the struggle we're facing. But I know that our minister is on top of it and working very hard to work within the whole region so that we can resolve some of those issues.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Glenn, to you the answer.
Thank you for your question, Mrs. Janesco. I've said a number of times that the Alberta Party believes that healthcare is something that needs to be interwoven through, through looking after our children, teaching them better habits, looking after our seniors, and focusing on hospitals. The 4 priorities for the Alberta Party's healthcare, our health system, in no particular order, is home care and long-term care, family doctors and primary care access, prevention of illness and injury, and mental health and addictions. We can no longer pretend that there isn't a problem. That's not an option in Alberta any longer. For too often, we've pretended that there is no problem, we've ignored it and hoped it would go away. And I have very personal experience of that at a local municipal level. Because what tends to happen, for example, when the Alberta government reduced the amount of spaces available for people with mental health and addiction issues, is those folks ended up on the streets and became the responsibilities of our police forces, and became the responsibilities of our municipalities, and often became the responsibility of volunteers that took a special place in their heart and time of their life to try and address some of these challenges. And families are struggling with these types of illnesses, and they need to know that the supports are there. And the supports are going to be there if we can work together in an integrated fashion. To understand that it shouldn't be this ministry bounces you to that ministry. We need to break down the barriers between the ministries and look at the person as a whole. And we haven't been doing that long enough, or we haven't been doing that well enough here in Alberta. And so the Alberta Party recognizing these as people, and that's where we need to start from. Child-centered first. Mental health issues are real. And my time is up. And so the Alberta Party will deliver on that. Thank you very much for your question,
Stuart?
Could you reiterate the motion, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially what the citizen was voicing or concerns about was the difficulty in essentially getting the roundabout between different departments on the topic of caring for children. So the question specifically was, how will you address the issue of kind of centralizing services so that there can be some sort of a one-stop shop, if you want?
Well, a number of things. I mentioned that we were going to try to decentralize healthcare decision-making back to the area to allow more decisions closer to the regional centers, and that applies to healthcare and to education to a certain degree. The closer you have the decision-making to the areas where the frontline staff are, the better the decisions are. At best, there's a stutter effect as information goes up the ladder to people. At worst, there's information lost. With respect to children, and I can maybe say something in addition to what I've said before, but special needs children, the Wild Rose Party does have a policy on that, and the policy says that children should be adequately assessed. and then adequately funded, for when they're going into educational institutions, in addition to the other resources that I talked about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mattson.
As a parent, I'm sure that you've read through every one of the parties' platforms on this issue. So I don't really think you need that. You're not looking to have that reiterated. What I see as the problem and the root cause is that Alberta is committed to uncontrolled economic growth. We're committed to a boom-bust economy, and as a result, social issues are getting secondary consideration. They're being left behind, and ultimately, it's not hard to find solutions once you're aware of what the problem is. But I don't think there's an intimate enough relationship between the caregivers and the parents that are involved. I'm not clear on all of the specifics of the platform as far as the party is concerned, but I recognize that there's a need to address this issue and ultimately to treat everybody as equals and as being no different than the rest of us. And I think once you establish that and you make a commitment to social issues over just strictly economic issues, that you'll make progress on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Mattson. We have an eighth question.
Hello, my name is Andy Sear. I'm a young father, practicing Catholic. So my question is, regarding moral issues, do parents have the right to educate, the primary right to educate their children? And if so, how is that right protected? Thank you.
Glenn?
Yes, parents have the primary responsibility to educate their children. And certainly that can be done through homeschooling, that can be done through various options that are available, such as Catholic, secondary Catholic primary education opportunities. And those rights need to be protected under law. However, and this is a huge proviso, and I've been saying this across the province for the last 2 weeks, when it comes to human rights, the Alberta Party believes that we should be teaching human rights in school as well, not just secular rights and not just religious rights. So we have to have an understanding that all of us as citizens can make separate choices on this province as to how their children are educated and what they're educated to, but that must ensure that the parent of the child is ensured that their child is receiving an education that meets the standard that they need. And when it comes to publicly funded education, it should be all schools should deliver to the public curriculum. Excuse me for stumbling on that word. And that's the Alberta Party position on that.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Stuart?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. One of the things we're opposed to that you might be referring to is the PC government's proposed changes to the Education Act that would see the power of the government overshadow and exceed the rights of the parents when it comes to standards and values that we teach our children. The Wild Rose believes in a choice of education, and we especially want to ensure that we have an innovative and vigorous education system, public, private, Catholic, homeschooling. And we believe that the parent has the right to teach morals and values to the children. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Mr. Mattson?
I'm at a loss for words. I don't understand the specifics of this particular issue, so I'm just not going to answer.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell?
Thanks for the question. I think that there's been a lot of fear-mongering going on over the last while over the Education Act and parents' rights in Alberta. And I can tell you that it's our government's desire that parents have to say in how they raise their kids, what religion they teach them, and what values they teach them. The great thing about this province is that we have a number of different options for you as a parent, and that's the public schools board, the Catholic school board, homeschooling, private schooling, and charter schools. The most important part of the Education Act that's been overlooked is that we want parents to take an active role in educating their children. We think that parents play a key role, and we want you to be involved in educating your children. We don't want kids to go to school 8 to 3 and then have a teacher sit with them and then they go home. We want parents to be involved. We want you to have a say in the education process. We want to make sure our kids come out and that they have good values and they're bright and they have a good education. So at no time will this government ever take away parents' rights on what they teach their children as far as their values and morals. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your answer. And we have a ninth question from the audience.
My name's Brian LeBerge. I'm a local entrepreneur, and a lot of the discussions that's gone on tonight are sort of premised on paying for these programs, with Alberta politicians having access to billions of dollars that other politicians across the country don't. And I guess that resource belongs to everybody in the room, also belongs to their grandchildren, so I'm interested in some comments from the candidates on their intention as far as appropriate use of that finite resource for the grandchildren of people in the room.
Is the question clear to all candidates? No. No? Okay, so essentially what the citizen was voicing his concern about the non-infinite nature of a budget, and therefore asking what are your positions with regards to responsible use of taxpayers' money. Do I understand this correctly?
No.
Okay.
The Alberta Advantage is premised on essentially energy resource.
Okay, just make your question straight to the point.
Okay, it is. Okay, so it's finite. I would like some comment on the intention for the retention of a portion of that for the children and grandchildren of Alberta. Not just to plow it into general revenue for use for today.
So you mean the sustainable use of our oil reserves?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Stuart, you're up. I said Stuart, yep.
Okay, with respect to the budget and the deficit and paying for some of these things, I don't think the government's checkbook's all that different than balancing your own checkbook. You have to pay for necessities first, and then you pay for things that are nice to have. So some of the things the Wild Rose government's going to do is balance the budget. And we're going to balance the budget through a number of ways. We're going to spread out the capital expenditure program over an extra year. We think there's too many senior managers in the government of Alberta. There's a 1-to-5 ratio. We think it should be a 1-to-10 ratio, so we're going to look at that. And the other big part of that is to look at wants versus needs, things you absolutely need versus things that you want. So when it comes to that, we'd be looking at things like not paying for $2 billion for the carbon dioxide program, using untried technology to put it into the ground, $100 million MLA parking lots. Those are things that we shouldn't be paying for when there's a deficit. With respect to trying to save for the future, the Wild Rose government has said that we're going to, when there's surpluses, and when there's surpluses in basic education, seniors care, police care, and the basic services are covered, that we're going to take a percentage of the surpluses and put it back into the Heritage Savings Trust Fund for the future. That fund now is worth less than it was when Premier Lougheed set it up to begin with. So that's our plan for saving some money for the future for Albertans, for your grandchildren.
Thank you, Stuart. Mr. Manson.
Well, the first step we would take is raising royalties. That's in our platform. We are also talking about incentives and disincentives to make sure that that raw bitumen is upgraded in Alberta rather than just shipping it overseas or south unprocessed. It'll create more jobs and we'll get better value for what we do take out of the ground. The other thing is a different outlook on regulation. Up until this point, the Progressive Conservative government is focused on promoting the industry, and I think that's hurt the image of the industry because people recognize that rather than being an impartial regulator, that the government is getting involved in taking sides. So as a result, we lose credibility in the world scene because our regulations aren't recognized as being world class. And finally, we would cancel the carbon sequestering program and put that money into some other projects.
Thank you for your answer. Mr. Campbell?
Well, thanks for the question, Mr. Bars. First of all, let me say that our budget is balanced. So our operating budget is balanced. We do not pay any more than we bring in. Where we're spending extra money is on infrastructure. And we've taken that money out of our sustainability fund, which at the time in 2007, Premier Stelmach put together $18 billion cash. So anything that you're seeing building right now is coming out of that fund. Premier Redford has said that we will, with our surpluses that will come in 2013, 2014, we'll put some of it into the Heritage Trust Fund, and we'll put some into the Sustainability Fund to continue to have both those funds grow. The Sustainability Fund is important because it allows us, when a rainy day comes, to spend the money we need. 2008, 2009, we spent $7.5 billion in infrastructure spending. It also created 70,000 jobs for Albertans. So when you see the ring roads in Calgary, you see the ring roads in Edmonton, you see the infrastructure that's going on out here, those are Albertans working. A lot of people don't realize that the next biggest revenue generator for the province after oil and gas is income tax. We want people to work. We want people to have good paying jobs because they pay taxes, which allows us to give you the services, whether it be healthcare, education, or seniors. So we have a plan in place that our budgets will remain balanced on the operating side of things. We will continue to build infrastructure because the prices are low right now. A lot of you in this room are business people. You saw what the prices were during the boom times to get labor to work for you. You saw what those costs were, whether it was McDonald's or whether you were a building contractor. We didn't want to get caught in that again, so we did a lot of infrastructure building while the time was right and the prices were low, and we'll continue to do that. So I think that we have been very responsible with our budget. We've been very responsible with our spending, and we are going to make sure that the oil and gas industry is there for future generations. I make no apologies for promoting the oil and gas industry in this province. Again, Fort McMurray.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Campbell. Thank you very much. Glenn, your turn.
Thank you. And thank you for your question, Mr. Labarge. So to get back to the question regarding about saving for the future, I want to premise my comments by saying that part of doing politics differently and introducing a new party to the province of Alberta is that we believe in a government that is fiscally responsible and socially progressive, a government that's focused on outcomes, not ideology. And fiscal responsibility begins with smart planning. And Alberta has lost its way when it comes to planning for the future, and thus isn't able to sustainably play for its operations and commitments. Once again, a budget was introduced this year that had a fiscal imbalance. It's a balanced budget, I'll grant Mr. Campbell that, but it also recognizes that it has a deficit. And the deficit is growing, not shrinking, and we've spent the Heritage Savings Fund to a large degree, and that was supposed to have been put away for when times got tough. The Alberta Party is committed in writing, and I'll read it to you, that we will treat our resource revenues with special regard, recognizing that the revenues we see from this is one-time in nature, and recognizing that a changing global landscape will one day cause our oil sands to be uneconomical to extract, and recognizing that a more diversified economy with money in the bank will be more capable of handling the transition away from a resource-based economy when that time comes. We will help ensure the future prosperity of our province by saving and investing a significant portion of these one-time revenues. A portion that will be used to make capital investments in Alberta, a portion will be used to strategically invest in Alberta ventures to help diversify the economy, and a portion will be used to save for the future through the Heritage Fund. This includes recognizing that we need to move our child's education away from the dependence on the cost of a barrel of oil. And we need to build a sustainable fund for education, a sustainable fund for healthcare, and a sustainable fund for Alberta that we all recognize we have a responsibility to use today's heritage resource to build a better tomorrow. And that's how the Alberta Party will approach this idea of taking benefit from what we have today to ensure that we build a sustainable future for tomorrow.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Tom.
See, in the Alberta Party government, the glass is always half full.
No. Nice try. Nice try. We can see the experience at work. Yes, we have a 10th question from the floor.
My name is Marlene Schmittig, and my question is directed at Robin Campbell. We read in our local papers that you have some big plans for Grand Cache. You're going to build a highway, a new highway. For Jasper, you're going to build a new school. For Edson, you're going to build a new hospital. Tell us, what are you going to do for Hinton?
Okay, thank you. So, I can appreciate that the question was directed. However, the running order makes it that the NDP representative will have first voice.
For those with long memories, they probably remember when our MLA was Ian Reid, and one of the last things he was heard to say as he was rushing through the hospital was that Hinton would never get anything again. So Maybe he has mystical powers that we're unaware of, but that seems to be a consistent pattern since that time. I wasn't here before that, so I can't speak to anything before 1979. But I think there's a need to direct money, provincial money, towards projects based on criteria, not based on lobbying efforts, not based on who you know. Ultimately, we need to clarify that system. The local people like myself don't recognize that that's the case. We believe that it's being driven by forces that we're not aware of.
Thank you, Mr. Manson. Mr. Campbell.
Thanks for the question. I think that, you know, I've done some things in Hinton that people might not be aware of. We brought money in for the new water treatment plant. We brought money in for the affordable housing project. We brought money in for the repairs to the library, to the rec center, to the hockey rinks. You know, I brought money in for the spray park. You know, I've done, I think, a very commendable job of looking after a lot of organizations in this town and helping them out when they've come to us for money. What I've done for the last 4 years, and I will continue to do, is I work with the municipalities, and I work with the counties, and I work with when people come to me and say, Robin, this is what we need for our area. So just a month ago, I sat down with the mayor of Hinton. I said, tell me what your priorities are. What do we want to work on over the next 4 years? And he gave them to me, and we're going to work on them. The hospital in Edson, it's sliding into the creek. It's got asbestos issues. It's got to be replaced. We're going to replace it. The new school in Jasper, it's got 2 years left in the life cycle of the school. Otherwise, we spend big money, and that comes out of the school board's pockets, and we don't want to see that happen. Also, I've got French students going to school in the Legion. So I think a new school in Jasper is needed. And like I say, it's the first joint Francophone public school board high school in anywhere in Alberta, and I'm very proud of that. Highway 40 to Grand Cache, we're spending money on it to widen that road, and I think that helps everybody in the region. There's a number of people in this room that go to Grand Cache and take their kids up there and play hockey, or go figure skating, or go use the pool. People from Grand Cache, Grand Prairie come down here to spend money in this community and go to Jasper and ski. So I think spending money on the Grand Cache Highway is a good investment. It's a safety issue. So, you know, I will continue to work with the communities. I don't pick and choose projects. I work with all our communities to have them come to me and say, Robin, this is a priority. Can you help us work with it? And I think over the last 4 years I've been pretty successful, and I will continue to keep the course of doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. The microphone now goes to represent the Alberta Party.
Thank you for your question, Mrs. Schmidt. Boy, I could give you a whole list of stuff that I'd love to do for the town of Hinton. I think most of that you're already aware of through my previous efforts. But I won't do that, actually, because the Alberta Party believes, and I believe I've demonstrated this, that it has to be based on sound planning and on needs assessment. Too often, our politicians make promises based on what they think you might want or need to get them elected. As I referred to earlier, that appears to be what's going on in the province right now for the first 2 weeks of this election, where they're outbidding each other on what it's going to take to buy your vote. The Alberta Party is only making one promise, essentially, and that's good governance. And there's two kinds of politicians in my experience. Those that promise things nicer and shinier. We'll build a new road, we'll build a new highway, we'll build a new school, and they'll get elected based on what they're going to give you. The second type of politician is those that tell you how they're going to do things for you, and how we're going to arrive at the decision-making process, and how we're going to represent your interests. And I can tell you that the first type of politician that makes promises, as soon as somebody else comes along that promises better, newer, more, they're gone. But the one that says, this is how we're going to do it, this is how I'm going to represent your interest in the decision-making process. My experience has been, even when you don't like the decision made by that individual, you'll respect the process they used to get there.